I'm Lee C. Camp, and this is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life.
I really think the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection.
That's literary agent, author, and prison reform advocate Lara Love Hardin talking about her best-selling memoir, The Many Lives of Mama Love.
There's 48 million people in this country addicted to opiates, and, another 150 million who love them. It's not a rare thing, it's just a thing we don't talk about enough, and we don't have, I think, enough stories about people getting to the other side of it.
We discuss Lara's journey from the Santa Cruz County Jail to the New York Times bestseller list and the lessons she learned along the way.
Nothing heals in isolation. Nothing. It only heals in community. It heals when people are like, really? Me too. Wait, you feel that way? So do I.
All coming right up. If you love No Small Endeavor, I suspect you will not want to miss joining us in Nashville for our Thanksgiving variety show on November 23. This year, we'll be joined by Sharon McMahon, #1 New York Times bestselling author and podcaster. Sharon is a longtime government and law educator who became known as America's government teacher during the 2020 election when she went viral for breaking down complex topics with a steadfast commitment to the facts. It'll be a night of thoughtful conversation, moving music, and a room full of folks all in pursuit of no small endeavor. This year it's at the beautiful Skirmerhorn Symphony Center here in Nashville. We'll be joined by the Choir Room, Grammy award-winning artist Allison Russell, and a full band for an amazing night you will not want to miss. Mark your calendars for November 23, and don't wait. Go get your tickets now at the link in the show notes or at nosmallendeavor.com/events. Do you know what's in your tap water? Did you know that even though contaminated water looks clear, it could put you at risk for serious health concerns? Surprisingly, some standard fridge and pitcher filters do little to remove most contaminants, and certain bottled water contains microplastics. So, what's the solution? Consider AquaTrue, the countertop water purifier tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants, including chlorine, lead, forever chemicals, and microplastics. Its patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system goes way beyond ordinary filters for pure, healthy water you can trust. No plumbing, no installation. AquaTrue's been featured in Business Insider, Popular Science, and named Best Countertop Water Filter by Good Housekeeping. Join 98% of customers who say their drinking water is cleaner, safer, and healthier. AquaTrue even comes with a 30-day best-tasting water guarantee. Go to aquatrue.com now for 20% off your purifier using promo code NSC. That's aquatrue.com, AQUATRU.com, promo code NSE.
Hey, it's Jacob Lewis, executive producer of No Small Endeavor. My icon? Lee C. Camp. I get to see his days up close and personal. Studio in the morning, writing over lunch, live event before the ink dries. If I lived in his shoes for a day, I'd be begging for a nap. Our icons run hot, so the fuel's got to keep up. That's why I reach for Kachava. Like the icons we love, I need nourishment that moves with me wherever the day goes. First off, Kachava is delicious. More milkshake than chalky health drink. I'm a chocolate guy. 2 scoops, cold water, oat milk, couple ice cubes. Sometimes I even put a splash of iced coffee, and I'm out the door. 30 seconds, and I feel clear, focused, and full for hours. It's got all the good stuff your mind and body crave for whole body health. With every 2 scoops, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. You can try Kachava risk-free with their Love It guarantee. Thousands of rave reviews agree you're going to love it. So, make your day iconic with Kachava. Go to kachava.com and use code NSE for 15% off your next order. That's Kachava, KACHAVA.com, code NSE for 15% off.
I like to say I was a late bloomer to addiction and then an overachiever, right? So I tend to overachieve in whatever I do for good or bad, right? That's just how it goes.
That is literary agent, author, and prison reform advocate Lara Love Hardin. We sat down recently to talk about her new book, The Many Lives of Mama Love, a memoir of lying, stealing, writing, and healing.
I became addicted to opiates before the opiate crisis was a crisis. So in the mid-90s, certainly where I lived in Northern California, Opiates were handed out in sample packs. There was bowls at the doctor's office, blister packs, try a free sample, and it was Vicodin.
Back then, Lara was a young mother in her mid-20s with a handsome husband, a beautiful home, and 3 children, along with all of the usual joys and challenges that life entails. From the outside, they looked like the idyllic suburban American family, but underneath the surface, things were not quite what they seemed.
I grew up in a family with addiction, alcoholism, and I tried to out-educate myself from that. I swore I would never be like my family. And I moved 3,000 miles away from my family, and I went to college, and I got a master's degree. I was the first one in my family to go to college. So I was really committed to being the mom I didn't have. And sometimes perfect suburban mom life means you're pretending everything is okay when it isn't. And that's certainly what it was for me. And when that started to fall apart was the first time I took a pill for emotional pain, not physical pain.
At first, the meds seemed like a perfect solution.
The feeling I got when I took a prescribed pain medication was one where I thought I was smarter, funnier, more connected to people, more joyful, more able to be excited about folding laundry and playing army guys with my toddlers and pretending my marriage was okay when it wasn't. And it helped me do that. And I remember one time I took 3 in one day. And I thought, oh no, this is a problem. I don't want to do this. This is not who I am. I told my husband at the time, and his response, again, this is like when we were late 90s now, his response was, everybody does it. It's no big deal. And he put him up in the top of the linen closet. He's very tall, like way high up. And I clocked where he put them, and I was like, okay, that's out of my life. And then it was maybe a week later, I dragged a chair over, and I climbed up, and I got him down. And by the time that addiction had reached its sort of peak, that 3 that I took that day, it turned into 60 a day.
Wow.
Which is 20 for breakfast, 20 for lunch, 20 for dinner. And it was on and off for years.
Lara worked to keep her habit mostly under control. She even got clean for 6 years. She and her husband separated, and she met someone new, a successful mortgage broker who wanted the same stable life she did. They went into business together, blended their 5 children, and bought the perfect $1 million home. Everything was going according to plan until it wasn't.
I relapsed because my second husband had brought drugs in the house. And this time I started smoking heroin. And something, again, I swore I would never do. My brother died of a heroin overdose. I had a sister who died of a drunk driving accident. And I remember driving to my kids' private school where I was volunteering to do an activity during the day. And I had found this heroin in my house. I had to call someone and be like, what is this sticky black substance that I'd found that my husband had brought in the house? I was at the stoplight and I was Googling how to smoke heroin on my way to the private school. And from that moment to the moment of my arrest, where I completely blew up my life, lost my business, everything fell apart, was only 11 months.
Lara's new book, entitled The Many Lives of Mama Love, begins here, in the spiral of addiction that led to 32 felony charges, separation from her children, and being sent to jail. Her story chronicles the lowest moments of her life and then a journey that took her from convicted felon to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. Lara has helped international figures tell their stories on the page, figures like the Dalai Lama, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Nelson Mandela. And after years of hiding the painful truth about her own past, she began telling her own story. In 2019, she won a Christopher Award for her work affirming the highest values of the human spirit, was nominated for an NAACP Image Award, and shortlisted for the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. Lara is also the co-founder of the Gemma Project, a gender-responsive organization serving incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women with integrity and compassion. Here's our conversation. Lara Love Hardin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on the show. I read your book on a long international flight last week, and I think it's one of the most courageous books I've ever read, and it's deeply moving, and I thank you for it. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Your story, in many ways, it seems to me, gets framed up as someone who's wanting to be a perfect suburban mother How would you kind of describe, for those who don't know your story, how you go from that striving to be a perfect suburban mother to finding yourself in jail?
Yeah. Well, describing the desperation in those 11 months is something I tried to do in the book, but it's really hard for people to reconcile. Like, I loved my children. I had 4 boys. The oldest was a junior in high school. The youngest was about to turn 4. And I would have thrown myself in front of a train, a bus, a car to save their life, to save anyone's children's life. But I couldn't stop the drugs. You know, it's so hard to explain the compulsion of addiction to someone who's never experienced it, because it is a compulsion. It's so sneaky because it feels like you will die if you don't take that. So, you know, I stopped running my business. I stopped making money. I stopped paying bills. Everything was going to food for the kids and drugs for me and my husband at the time. And when my friends would go in to school to drop their kids off, I would open up their car door and pull money or a credit card out of their wallet. And I knew right from wrong. I knew, like, stealing from people I cared about and my neighbors was not who I was. But I kept saying, I'll fix this tomorrow. I'll fix this tomorrow. And then when the police showed up at my house, I had no more tomorrows. I was arrested in my suburban cul-de-sac where people don't get arrested. And my youngest son was the only one home. The other 3 older boys, they were all in their school. And part of me was relieved that I was being stopped. And then the sheriff's deputies wouldn't let me call someone to come get him. And I was crying and begging them, please let me call someone. And they called Child Protective Services. And so 2 strangers came to the house in a black sedan to take my son out. And he had never spent a night away from me. He was at that stranger danger age. And so my hands are handcuffed behind my back and I'm telling him, it's okay. These people are friends. You're going to be okay. I didn't know where he was going or what was happening, but I couldn't comfort him. He ran to me for me to pick him up and hold him, and my hands were handcuffed behind my back. And I think that's the moment that was the end of everything, and then also kind of the beginning. I got taken to the local jail, and the whole time I'm crying and asking about my son. And then walking into that jail, the sheriff's deputy grabbed my arm very tightly and he said, you will never see your son again. And you should not be anyone's mother. And I 100% believed him in that moment.
Thank you. A lot I want to explore there, but how do you try to explain the experience of powerlessness to people who have not experienced it?
I guess the best way I can explain it is it literally feels like you're not choosing between, am I going to do drugs today or not? Am I going to live today or die today? Which is complicated because what I was doing every day was killing myself, but just really ineffectively, right? It was very slow, painful, miserable self-destruction every single day on that cycle of finding more and getting more and using more to fix all the mess you've made because you're finding more and using more and getting more. So it is this sort of hamster wheel of misery. It was never a party. It really felt like I needed it to live, like I needed it to breathe air. There was no rational, logical, and I'm a pretty rational, logical person. I knew right from wrong. I knew what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do and who I was and who I wasn't, and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
There's 48 million people in this country addicted to opiates and another 150 million who love them. It's not a rare thing. It's just a thing we don't talk about enough. And we don't have, I think, enough stories about people getting to the other side of it.
The one scene that filled me with such anxiety in your storytelling about the powerlessness was when you get out on bail and you need to stay clean when you're out on bail before you're going to then be tried. And you can't do it. How do you remember that experience?
I remember that experience, honestly, as the darkest time. And I went away for 2 months to write the draft of the book, away from family, away from work, away from friends. I went across the globe. I was on a completely different time zone because I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm only going to do it if I'm going to be really honest. You know, I had a period of clean time in the 2.5 months that I'd been in jail before I got out on bail. Again, this is all pre-sentencing and all of that. But when I got out, I had those 2.5 months clean, which was an accomplishment because I saw more drugs in jail than I've ever seen in my life. And so when I got out and my husband was not on the same path, we were co-defendants at that point. He was arrested at the same time and was bailed out before me. So when he presented drugs to me, I had no skills to resist at that point. I had no emotional skills. I had no mindset skills like I would have now. If someone put drugs in front of me now, it wouldn't be an issue. But back then I had nothing. And so it was really easy going through the hardest time in my life and so much uncertainty because I didn't know if I was going to prison for 30 years or not. I didn't know if I'd see my children again or not, which seems logically like a really good reason to not do drugs at all because so much is at risk, but I didn't have anything else to fall back on. And I was isolated. I really think the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And I'm sure there's a scientist who will say that better. And there's been studies, like the rat park study, where they give rats 2 water bottles. One has cocaine in the water and one doesn't. And so they just start drinking the cocaine in water or something. I'm going to miss someone. Google up the rat park study.
We looked this study up. The experiment actually used morphine water.
And then they do the same experiment, but they make this magical rat playground. They put other rats in there. They have like a magical environment and still have the 2 water bottles, but the rats don't do the cocaine water when they're in this sort of community.
That's fascinating. Another major cord running throughout your narrative is the power of shame and the trauma of shame. And the neighbor from hell headline being prominent here.
Yeah. So one of the things when I was first brought into jail and the deputy said to me that I shouldn't be anyone's mother, and I believed him, like I had so much shame. And I really believed in redemption arcs, but I didn't think I deserved one. I thought those were reserved for people who were good fundamentally. And I believed that I was fundamentally bad and not worthy of that. You go to jail and every identity you have is gone, right? You're just a number. And you're in a place that is dehumanizing and stigmatizing. Going into Child Protective Services court in handcuffs when you can't hold the papers, trying to say, no, I was actually a good mom is really, there's a big disconnect there, right? So when I was sentenced the next day, my face was on the front page of the paper calling me the neighbor from hell. And for the record, I'm an excellent neighbor now. But it was humiliating. And it was not only humiliating for me, it was humiliating for my children. My son Ty was in junior high. And after I got out of jail, he was like, Mom, that paper, every single classroom I went in, that paper was on the teacher's desk. Was your face.
My. Oh, wow.
I don't think public humiliation leads to rehabilitation for anyone, but I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I believed everything negative thing. But really what happened from that is someone anonymously printed out and mailed me all the online comments to that headline, hundreds of them, because otherwise I would never have seen them, right? There's no computer access. But I read those online comments and they were hateful and hurtful. And some of them I could tell the usernames were people I knew, and it was threatening and it said every kind of horrible thing about me. And I read them over and over again and I carried them around, those comments about me for years, like literally and figuratively. And every horrible thing that was said about me, it just sort of wired into my brain and I believed it because I was thinking horrible things about me. I'd imploded my life, yes, but my children's life, my community. I had not one friend that I had in 40 years come visit me. And I wouldn't have want them to visit me because I didn't think I deserved a friend. Shame, it's so sticky and it sticks with you. And it, 16 years later, it can still pop out certain times. Like I was just on an airplane and someone asked me what I did and I wrote a book. What's your book about? And I was like, oh boy, you're stuck on an airplane next to me. Do you want to know? Like, is this going to scare you? Hi, I was a neighbor from hell. Like, nice to sit next to you for 5 hours, but that's shame popping up. You think you're like, that's part of my story. It's not the whole story. Like I can do all that stuff. But then in practice, now I notice it when it pops up.
Yeah. It strikes me as fascinating that your shame that you narrate so powerfully, that's not just something that happens to you after you're being arrested. But in many ways, as you point back numerous times through the book to your decline, you can't show other people your struggle, which I would presume is also related to shame, right?
Yeah, I was very committed to the idea that everyone in the world both like me and think I had everything all together, right? And when you are working so hard to be the perfect mom, the last thing I could do at that time was ever ask for help. I had people who would have helped me. I was not brave enough to ask for help. I could not get out of my own self-regard enough to ask for help. And the irony is, I remember thinking at the time, there is no way I could ever go to rehab for 30 days and be away from my children for 30 days. That would be impossible. And then the irony, of course, is I went to jail for a year.
You're listening to No Small Endeavor and our conversation with Lara Love Hardin. I love hearing from you. Tell us what you're reading, who you're paying attention to, or send us feedback about today's episode. You can reach me at lee@nosmallendeavor.com. You can get show notes for this episode in your podcast app or wherever you listen. These notes include links to resources mentioned in the episode and a full transcript. We also have a free bi-monthly newsletter in which I riff on themes and behind-the-scenes goings-on called the NSE Notebook. You can subscribe to that newsletter for free by going to our website at nosmallendeavor.com/newsletter. Coming up, Lara and I discuss the shame she still carries, the healing power of community, and the power of meditation. Hello, friends. Lee Seacamp here. Do you ever wish you had more folks to discuss the conversations we offer on No Small Endeavor? Something like a podcast listening club where you could engage big ideas about what it means to live life well and then discuss it with friends and companions? If so, you have stumbled upon the announcement you have been waiting for. We're pleased to announce the start of Endeavor Together, our new initiative that equips and nurtures close-knit communities to talk about the things you actually want to talk about. Each small group conversation series is built upon our podcast content and provides you with super easy to use content with questions, videos, links, and guidance so that you or any good and willing soul can host small group conversations exploring what it means to live a good life. Maybe you'll meet in homes around a table, maybe in a coffee shop or local park, maybe at work during lunch hour, maybe in a church Sunday school class. What we are providing is the scaffolding for good conversation. The rest is up to you. And here's the best part. Thanks to generous support from the Lilly Endowment, it's free. The first two series have been released. The first, Let's Disagree Better, and the second, Vulnerability. Get started today. Visit nosmallendeavor.com and click on Endeavor Together. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com and click on Endeavor Together. Enjoy. You at some point refer to addicts as deeply riddled with self-obsession. But we talk more about that?
It's a very self-obsessed point of view when you're in the throes of addiction. Like, everything is about your survival. Obviously, it's hard to get out of your own self-regard and self-obsession and self-service, or else I could have stopped, right? And I think even in this sort of idea that everyone was invested in me being perfect, no one was thinking about me. Everyone's thinking about themselves and the things they're ashamed of and the things they're hiding. Everybody's got secrets, right? Like, since my book came out, from my cell phone to LinkedIn to Instagram, everybody in the world tells me their secrets, their deepest, darkest secrets, which is a weird place to be in, right? And certainly I'm no therapist and should not be anyone's therapist. But what it has taught me even more is that everybody is carrying something. Everyone is hanging on to something they don't want other people to know about. And nothing heals in isolation. Nothing. It only heals in community. It heals when people are like, really? Me too. Wait, you feel that way? So do I.
When you think about that process of working through shame, you tell a number of stories of the way that shame comes up in social settings beyond jail. What are one or two of those that kind of stand out to you that are painful reminders of the way in which shame is this kind of socially propagated practice that often continues to wound us
I have a nonprofit that specifically helps incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. So I'm going to just talk about women because that is what I know and what I've experienced. It's the fastest growing incarcerated population. And 8% of women in jail are mothers of minor children. So, there's already mom shame. We all have mom shame where it's like, oh, I actually didn't bake those cupcakes for the bake sale. I bought them and then pretended to bake them. Or I'm not doing organic food. Or I'm going to let you have all the screen time you want because I'm tired. All of those things. Being an incarcerated mom is shame on steroids. And so there was that alone. But even after jail, like I got my son back. He's in first grade, going to parent-teacher conferences. My face has been on the paper. I'm sure everyone recognizes me. Again, no one was thinking about me as much as I thought they were. But I was so scared of people finding out. I spent a dozen years in shame where I was afraid people would Google me and see that paper. But I remember one back to school night, and this mom came up to me and said, my son Augie loves playing with your son Caden. We should do a play date. You could take Augie home after school, or he could come to the house. And it was this moment where so much shame, because I'm like, if you knew that I just got out of jail a year ago, you probably wouldn't want your son to come play with me. But I can't tell you that. Right? I'm not going to tell you that. And my house is 400 square feet. I'm embarrassed by it and also proud that I have one right now. And you might not want me in your house if you knew me. So I'm not going to bring Caden over and walk in your house. It's just this very isolating way. And not to jump ahead, but I worked with really amazing, not judgmental people in the world for a dozen years before I talked about my past. And it was like I was building this resume of goodness. Right? I was once called the neighbor from hell on the front page of the paper, but then Nelson Mandela thanked me in his last book. So I was building this resume to defend my humanity when the truth came out. Because I know the truth is two trains running parallel, right? And me trying to be as good adjacent and do as good work in the world quietly, anonymously as possible. So that when the truth came out and I was judged or I was called bad, I could prove I was good. I don't do that anymore. I don't think I need to defend my humanity or my goodness, but I lived that way for far too long, a dozen years of fear. The best way to describe it is, when you're leaning back in a chair, right? Kids do this all the time. You're tipping back in a chair, and there's that moment when you go too far and you're kind of in between. Am I going to catch myself and be able to put the chair back on the ground, or am I going to fall crashing to the floor? That moment of fear in between, when you don't know which way it's going to wobble, the chair, that's what shame feels like. And I live that way every single day. Think of the worst thing you've ever done. It's on a spectrum, but everyone has the worst thing they've ever done. Maybe they betrayed someone. Maybe they lied. Maybe they stole a paperclip at work. Maybe they cut someone off. Maybe they committed a real crime. Whatever it is, if you think, what if whenever anyone thought of you, they only thought of that thing? What if any time anyone ever talked about you, no matter what you're doing in the world, they only talked about that thing? That's what it's like getting out of jail. That's what it's like being formerly incarcerated. That's what reentry is like. That's what trying to rebuild your life is like. And so that shame popped up a million times. Even 16 years later, it pops up. Like I said, on an airplane, but also I sold my house last year, which is great. I had a house to sell. I never thought I would own a house again, and I did. But all of a sudden, I was like, I'm going to rent for a while. And then this idea of going through a property management company, oh my God, they're going to do a background check. What if no one will rent to me? It doesn't matter how many New York Times bestsellers I have or how many lunches with Oprah I've had. That fear and that shame, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is a barrier that's still there. So those kind of things pop up all the time. And I write this in the book, every sentence, whether you're just arrested or in jail for the weekend or in prison for many years, every sentence is a life sentence. Because when you get out, it will affect you forever and potentially generations forever.
That's a helpful segue into me asking about your perception these days of the nature of the criminal justice system. Point to numerous ways in which it's broken. But what's kind of top of mind for you these days about the nature of that brokenness?
The hardest thing about jail, which I certainly never knew, and I'm the first to admit I never cared about incarcerated women or men until I became one, right? But, re-entry is a part of incarceration. It's not like you're incarcerated, you get out, and then, okay, you're done. You followed the rules, you paid for your crimes, and now go on with your life. There's very real very illogical barriers that we put to people who are trying to rebuild their lives post-incarceration. And it doesn't make sense, right? Like we say, okay, you're free, don't fail, but then everything is set up for failure, whether it's jobs, housing, vocational licenses, childcare, benefits. Like there's all these punitive things that are in place in the system post-incarceration that ensure people go back. And sometimes you go back, oftentimes you're going back for a reason that has nothing to do with committing a crime or doing a drug. So there's a lot of dehumanization in incarceration, and there's a lot of illogical barriers post-incarceration. We can't talk about recidivism rates without discussing why people go back. And again, I knew nothing about this until I got out. I really thought like, okay, I'm done. La, la, la. I'll skip off to my future. And I just had no idea. It's been 16 years and I still have dreams. It used to be weekly. Now it's like maybe every few months that I'm going back to jail and I haven't done anything wrong. I think the system is really hard for everyone, the people who are running it. No one's going into corrections or social work or public defenders or prosecutors without caring about people, right? Like there's easier jobs to do. And I have a lot of empathy for everybody in the system, from judges to correctional officers and to those incarcerated, locked up in the system when maybe they needed treatment. 100% of incarcerated women have histories of trauma. And they're in a system that is triggering and re-traumatizing every day. I found a lot of humanity in jail with the women I was with. We took care of each other. We helped each other. There wasn't a lot of humanity outside for us in there, but it's where I found a lot of it. There was more humanity in jail than in my cul-de-sac, to be fair.
You come across a copy of Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now in jail, and it seems like that's a significant turning moment for you.
Yeah. I mean, one of the gifts, and going to jail was a gift. It didn't feel like at the time or for many years after, but looking back now, it was a great gift. I mean, I think I became a better human from my experience. I had more empathy. I became a better writer, friend, mother, all the things, worker. But the first sentence of my book is reading was my first addiction. Books saved my life when I was a kid. It's what I escaped to. It's what I loved. When there was chaos in my household I grew up in, I would just read. And books saved my life again in jail. And two books in particular. The first was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And there was one sentence in that book that taught me how to quiet my mind, because I was spending all my time trying to rewrite the past. Why didn't I ask for help? Why didn't I go left instead of right? Like we all do that. Why did I ever get that prescription? And when I wasn't doing that, I was just having anxiety for the future. Like, who's going to hire me? How am I going to get my son back? This clock's ticking. What am I going to do? Where am I going to live? Who's going to be my friend? There was one sentence in that book where he said, to quiet your mind, you just think to yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. And when you do it, everyone could try it. You think it in your head and you have no thought. Like it just stops. It's like a great
That's
little
fascinating.
hack.
I
So
was just doing it just now. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it works every time. And so the first time I did that, there was just like a millisecond of peace. And then I would do that and it would get longer and longer. And, you know, jail's a great place to learn to meditate. There's easier ways. You can do a course online. Don't go to jail for this. But it helped me, you know. And his book also was like talking about collective pain and trauma and sending love and light to people. And so I would go to all my court dates and this prosecutor did not like me. And I would just be there and I'd be like, I'm present. I'm sending him love. I was just sending love and light, sending love and light. And he did not care for me at all. But it's helpful. There's still some people I send some love and light to now and then. So that book saved me. And the other one was Mark Nepo's book, The Book of Awakening.
I was so glad to see you say that one. I love that book. Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Oh, I love that book. You know, and this idea about pain pushing until vision pulls was like transformative. Like if I ever get a word tattoo, that's what I will get. Because it was really this moment where I was like, wow, I've lived my whole life, 40 years of my life, letting pain push me. Everything I did was achieving, trying to fight for was because this pain was pushing me. And what if I let vision pull me? What if I'm in jail thinking, someday I'm going to write about this and make meaning out of it. Someday I'm going to speak to people. Someday I'm going to meet Oprah. Like whatever, I'm a big fan of delusional thinking. I've done it my whole life. But that's part of vision pulling, right? Even if that vision is delusional, I'm going to let that pull me. And what's so amazing, so I read Mark Nepo's book, The Book of Awakening. It's like a daily affirmation reading, essay, meditation practice. He's such a wise writer. And so I read it like a horoscope. This is why I love true life, because if you were to write this in fiction, it would be unbelievable. So the end of June, I got invited to go teach a 3-day writing retreat at Omega Institute in upstate New York. And who is teaching there the same weekend? Mark Nepo. So he is there, this man who really changed my life, saved me 15 years ago. And I get up onto the campus. It's this beautiful upstate New York campus in the woods. And the director's got me in a little golf cart. She drops me off at the cafe. There's a little cafe table, and Mark Nepo and another man are sitting there. And I recognize him right away. And my mouth drops open. I look at him and he stands up and he goes, "Lara." Like he had read my book.
Really?
And we ended up as colleagues, right? You can't even make this up. Like his book saved me at my lowest. And we got to have every meal together that weekend and become friends. And I got to tell him how much his book had saved my life. One of those like full circle serendipitous moments. It was amazing.
Coming up is a short break, followed by our conversation on trauma, gratitude, and the lesson Lara learned from Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
New Icy Hot. Nighttime recovery. Relieves pain at nighttime while your body recovers. Icy Hot. You're so back.
Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55%, so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
At least 3 times that I remember in the book, you use the word skill and the significance of lack of skill. And when I think about my own trauma or my own powerlessness and my own seasons of great difficulty, that was one of the things that I discovered as well, is that I lacked certain basic life skills. But when you think about key skills or practices that then began to be crucial for you in learning to live well, what are ones that kind of immediately come to mind for you that have been important to you?
Yeah, obviously like the ability to quiet my mind and meditate. I think just an awareness. Awareness is a big one. Like, oh, look, that's shame. Oh, look, I'm creating a whole story out of this. And knowing my assumption that someone's mad at me is a trauma response, not real, things like that. But mostly, probably the biggest thing is having an emotional language now. I grew up in a family where no one certainly talked about how they were feeling or emotions. No one even said, like, how was your day today? Like, it just wasn't, I never had a language for emotions. My own emotions embarrassed me. Here's the thing, you never know how much you change until it gets tested, right? So last year in 2024, the subtitle of my book is A Memoir of Lying, Stealing, Writing, and Healing. So I made this joke, yeah, I'm healed, right? But it's a process. It's a process. In 2024, like January 1st, my dad died. And I had just landed in Key West, Florida. I'd never been there before. I didn't write about it in the book. It's a new dad I got 8 years ago based on a DNA test. I got an entirely new family, which is a great gift as an adult. But I was alone in a place and I didn't know what to do. And the old me, when she didn't know what to do, would figure out what to do and just do it, right? But I called people. Like I had community. For the first time in my life, I went through hard things, and it was a whole series of things. I went through a hard thing not alone. Now I have a feeling, I have an emotion, like I'm scared. I'll call 27 people and be like, I'm scared. Never would I do that in my life. But really it is about community and having people that I can be so messy with. I do not have to be my best self. I can rage, I can vent. Like in the beginning of January, within 3 weeks, I had death, divorce, and Oprah, right? 2 horrible things and a good thing, And sometimes it's even harder when it's like a great thing, right? Like you're so discombobulated. Like my dad died. My husband told me he found someone else 10 days later. And then a week later, Oprah pops in and says, I've chosen your book. And I was like, what is happening 2024? Like it was whiplash and chaotic. And for the first time in my life, I was okay. I was like, why am I going through all these hard things? Like I used to take 20 pills to call the utility company to make a payment arrangement, to get that courage, right? Just to make a phone call. And I was like, wow, I'm going through these hard things. And for a moment, I was like, wait, why am I okay? And it was because my automatic response coping skills was not to handle this alone, go inside, make it about me, internalize it. It was to gather close the people I trusted where I could be my actual self with. Messy, raging, crying, laughing, ridiculous. And like I said earlier, like everything gets better in community. Everything is better shared, And so I think that's probably the greatest thing is I don't go through anything alone.
Yeah, I'm flashing back to a season of therapy I went through a lot of years ago now. But I remember in one of the first sessions, the therapist said, "What are you feeling?" And I just looked at him blankly and said, "I don't know." And he smiled and he said, "I think you're telling the truth." And that was this kind of transformative moment, right? Where you began to identify things that previously one has never identified. And it is a new way of being in the world.
That's why they invented those little charts where you could just point to an emoji face.
Yes.
Be like, this is my feeling. What is this one?
Yeah. Another recurring thing that I often hear as people share their stories, and a lot of kind of spiritual wisdom will point back to the notion that coming to healing or wholeness so often is a finding their way back to themselves, back to some joy or some passion or something central to their identity. And that seems to be true in your story as well, in that there you are in jail, and one of the ways that you began to recover your sanity is through re-engaging with your writing. But what was that experience like for you?
I was always a reader and a writer. I was a big reader as a kid and then started writing in school, and I got a lot of attention for it. And I went to college, undergraduate, majored in creative writing, English and creative writing, and then went and got my Master's of Fine Arts in fiction writing. This is all pre-jail, right? And then I stopped writing. I had 3 little kids. I got to pay the bills. You can't pay the bills with writing, all the reasons to stop. Not realizing at the time that writing was how I processed my interior world, how I made meaning of the life, how I made meaning of those emotions I had no language for. I have a great language through my fingers on a keyboard, but verbally I did not have them. In community, I didn't have them. So when I was arrested, I started writing again, and I wasn't doing drugs. And I was in there with amazing women who all had stories. And in this system that's broken, there's no room for context or to hear people's story. So I would listen to them, and then I would write a letter to the judge as them, asking to be put in treatment, say, instead of sent to prison, or a pass to go to a funeral, or, I would hear their stories and I'd write in their voice. Because I have a background in fiction writing, voice, and because of just a childhood trauma response, I'm very good at assimilating with people and being other people. And so I'm sure it was a crime, but it was a crime for good, right? So I'd write letters to the judge. So I was helping people, which felt good. But the thing that it really did for me is suddenly I felt, at a time when I felt like I had no value to the world. I was not a mom. I was not a wife. I was not a boss, employee, community member. I wasn't on the school board anymore. I wasn't coaching Little League. I felt like I had no value in the world, and everyone had written me off. I felt valuable. I felt like I'm doing some good, and I have a valuable skill, right? I'm being of value. And writing felt good. And I started writing about the women I was with and our experience. And I started writing a young adult novel that I could send to my son in pages. And he was a writer. He was 13 at the time, thinking we could work on that as a bridge to connection. So that was one of the great gifts of jail, as I got back to what my first love was and what I thought I was really good at and what I had gotten a lot of validation in the world for. I didn't know about ghostwriting and that I would later work at a literary agency and start ghostwriting for real. But that is really where I learned that skill. To be a good collaborative writer, you need a lot of empathy. You have to be able to put yourself into the consciousness of another person and live their life and their choices through their eyes and their mind. And that's why I love memoir as a media form, right? Because there's no other medium where you are the consciousness of another person. So if you're reading my book in the first person, you're making all my questionable life choices as me, with me. You're right alongside, right? That I voice, when you read, you don't get that from a movie. You get empathy, sympathy, you might relate, but that's why I love memoir, like, because you are that person, for better or for worse.
Right. And so then you get out of jail and you begin finding your legs again and looking for jobs. And then you find your way remarkably into this work in a literary agency. And then before too long, you're like literally doing work for people like Desmond Tutu and then working on a joint project with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. You tell this beautiful story about going to be with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and the way this becomes a key moment for you in learning your own self-forgiveness, and then with both of them, acceptance. Either one of those stories or both of those in brief about the kind of way that changed your own life?
Yeah, it was amazing. The first book that I really was fully working on as a writer was The Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu and Empad Tutu. And he is the beacon of forgiveness in the world. He taught a country how to forgive. You know, he did the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Again, not a judgy person, neither is the Dalai Lama, but I was so in fear of people finding out my past. And so working on that book was both amazing, except for the chapter on self-forgiveness. I was like, I can't do that. I don't know how to forgive myself. And that book has all these exercises in it. And I actually went back into the jail and tested out the exercises that Empad Tutu had written for the book with the women in jail. And every single woman in there had the same problem. Like, I can forgive someone else, but I can't forgive myself. Looking back now, I can look at every book I worked on, whether I was just part of the support team or I was an actual collaborative writer or editing them. And there's dozens and dozens of books. I've written 14 books. 12 is other people, 1 co-authored, and 1 is myself, where I was in charge of writing the book. But I can see how every book helped me. Like working with this neuroscientist and this neurosurgeon about neuroplasticity and really thinking about what are the messages I'm grooving into my brain every day. Even saying every day I'm an addict. Do I want to say that every day? Like learning about neuroplasticity, that helped me. Learning about forgiveness, that helped me both forgive other people and forgive myself. Going to India to work with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu on the Book of Joy, like I didn't know joy and play. Like that would come later, because when you're in survival mode, there's not a lot of time for playing and being joyful, right? There's so much untapped creativity in the prisons and jails across this country and the world, and economic potential and all kinds of things. But again, when you're just in survival mode, you're not exploring your creativity, right? You're not like, what do I have to offer that's creative and fun and all of that? So it was a dozen years, it was 12 years before I let people know about my past. I just lived in so much fear, and no one was judging me as much as I was judging myself. And the moment I did like a local TEDx talk, right? And I got on a stage and I said, I was once called the neighbor from hell, and now let me tell you about some other people I've been. And somehow I had this misguided belief that if people knew the truth about me, they would run screaming from the room. And the opposite happened. They ran closer when I told the truth. And I wanted to connect more because I think I was safe to do that with. But the feeling I had after just saying the scary thing out loud, that I was so worried for over a decade that people would find out, that feeling I had was better than any drug. Like that lightness, that like, oh, I can breathe. Like I can just not worry about this. That's really why I decided to do the book, because I wanted more of that feeling and this idea that this might help. My humiliating stories might help people. So let's do that.
Another one of the books that you wrote with Anthony Ray Hinton, that's another one of my favorite books. And we've had Mr. Hinton as a guest on our show. And what an incredible human being and incredible story. And again, you helped tell that so beautifully. Yeah,
he is one of my favorite humans in the world. And no offense to the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, but my greatest spiritual teacher is Anthony Ray Hinton, right? He taught me more about gratitude and letting go and joy than any book I've ever read or anything, because he was 30 years as an innocent man on Alabama's death row. And, we spent a lot of time together in Birmingham, Alabama. We had a lot of meals together. And he would say things to me like, I'm not going to have hatred for anyone. Like, why would I give the state of Alabama any more of my energy? Why would I be bitter? Like, why would I not choose joy and humor? He walks 5 miles every day. And I was like, well, why are you walking in the rain? He's like, because I can, right? He helped me so much because in jail, I wanted nothing more than to be doing dishes in my own home for my own family, not for hundreds of jail inmates, right? I wanted to sweep my own floor. I wanted nothing more. And then years later, I would find myself in my own kitchen, in my own house, feeling grumpy about doing my dishes. And then I think of Anthony Ray Hinton in gratitude, and I remember the me that said, this is all I want, right? And so it was such a gratitude check.
So as we close, the title of your memoir, The Many Lives of Mama Love, how has that being able to acknowledge that we are all complicated, that you're complicated, that I'm complicated, why has that been so important to you, that we have this multiplicity about ourselves?
I think it's a definition of freedom. I don't worry about being the perfect single anything anymore, right? I'm not the perfect mom. I'm not trying to be the perfect mom. It's just acknowledging that we all have different stories going on through our lives. There's a great poem, I don't remember the name or the author, but it is like this sort of ode to all the women you've been, and I think that's just part of accepting that we're not all the worst thing we've done or the worst season of our lives. I can be a college student and a cul-de-sac mom and an inmate and a felon and a best-selling author, and I could be all the things. And there's a fullness to that and a freedom in that I think is a gift we give ourselves and the people we care about and strangers, right? Because everybody's got a story. And that nickname was given to me by the women I was incarcerated with. And so it was a great gift. Now I have people at book signings sitting on my lap and everyone calls me Mama Love. And it's a gift and a reminder of where that nickname came from too, and I do a lot of work with incarcerated women across the country, and I visit a lot of jails and prisons and book clubs. And I don't want those women to be forgotten. That's my mission now.
Yeah. Been talking to Lara Love Hardin about her memoir, a New York Times bestseller entitled The Many Lives of Mama Love. Lara, thank you. It's, again, beautiful book and a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to No Small Endeavor and our interview with literary agent, author, and prison reform advocate Lara Love Hardin. Her book, The Many Lives of Mama Love, is out now. We gratefully acknowledge the support of Lilly Endowment Incorporated, a private philanthropic foundation supporting the causes of community development, education, and religion. Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible: Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Carrie Harmon, Jason Cheesley, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, and Audrey Griffith. Our theme song was composed by Tim Lauer. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studios.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.